enough of me talking. I'm going to spotlight Andrew and turn it over to him. And sir, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, guys, before we dive into talking about my business, I was out here about you. I was not on the call last week. There was a lot of times where no answer questions. I'm hoping you guys will talk and give your thoughts on things that they're doing that I'm not. Or in one scenario, through my Excel, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Where I've got opportunity failing, we can talk about you guys feel like opportunities where you're failing. But I want us, before we get in, and really just ask the question of you guys and give me, throw some things at me, ideally one-word answers here. But what do you guys feel like is the most important thing you either are currently getting from your business or you would like to get from your business next year? It doesn't have to be money.
On some spending.
Okay. So we've got referrals. Somebody, was that Melanie? Did you say money?
No, I didn't say money, but money was good. I was going to say sleep.
Okay.
I need help, and I don't know what kind to get next. Well, I do, but
I'll tell you, for me, the most important thing about this business is time. I will trade doing less business or doing more efficient business for way more time than anything else. Anything else? Something that's like a really important driver for you that you either want to get from your business or currently get from your business that's the most important thing to you?
Predictable cash flow.
Cash flow?
Predictable income.
Okay. And I'm only writing these down for me for later, but feel free to also look at the floor. Because I'm going to reference back to some of these as we move into some of these perspectives we're going to talk about today. Is there anything else that's important that you guys feel like we're missing from here? And this could be anything, family, time, savings, retirement. It could be anything.
I need to leverage myself more, automate more systems.
Art, I can hardly hear you. I see you're trying to talk, but you're not muted, but you're just.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Leverage myself more, have just make smoother, streamline the process more.
Some of you guys don't know this about me, but I'm severely dyslexic, so I don't spell very well, so don't judge me for the way I write things down. Okay, good. So I think one of the things that I love Business Planning Clinic. I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of wrap our heads around what we need to do on a micro level to achieve huge results. But I think one of the things that gets missed in that is it's purely about how much money you make, and it can be hard to kind of really base that in the stuff that's important to you, even though we spend the first 45 minutes of that Business Planning Clinic talking about the things that are really important to us. And we're going to reference back to this kind of stuff because what I want to make sure that we're all doing is really building, judging, and holding our finances accountable relative to the things that actually matter, which isn't how many houses you sell necessarily. And so I just want to make sure we're tying back to the right things. Okay, we'll dive in now. I want to start with just saying that I think these sessions is an extremely good opportunity for us to really gain some real perspective because as much as we do together as an office, I still think a lot of times we all operate our business on a little island. And we don't have a good opportunity to really expose ourselves to anything other than our own perspective about our business and our operations and what we do and what we don't do. And I think we can learn a lot from that. So I'm excited to get a chance to teach this. this is a pretty basic thing to me, so it was funny when I sat down with Mike last week to talk about this class, and I walked into his office, and the first thing he said was, I think I could probably just teach this in 10 minutes. What am I going to do with an hour? I'm basically going to tell you to pay attention to your expenses, to try and find waste, pay attention to your income, to try and find opportunities, and then we can talk about my Excel sheet, and we can all move on. And he laughed. I shrugged my shoulders, and things. And Mike really things that, truthfully, are some thought processes in my mind, but he never really put a name on it. And so exploring those things together last week was great, and doing it more on my own was great too. Really, we identified 3 perspectives, and these are not 3 models by any means. I think all 3 of these things need to be taking place inside of your world of your business finance. So they're all behind me here. We're going to do them in this order, but really there's 3 things that we uncovered, and one is just kind of a profit first perspective. Secondly is just data and trends analysis, which is pretty cut and dry, pretty boring. That's where I'm going to share with you guys what I do, and we can kind of look through my Excel sheet. I'm perfectly willing to give this Excel sheet to all of you if you want it. It's going to have all of my stuff on it because I don't have a blank one at the moment, but that's fine with me. And then lastly is zero base, and I will probably have Mike do a little bit of talking on that one, because that one is it's pretty extreme, but it's an interesting idea. So let's dive in and talk about profit first. This is as simple as it gets. It's just a matter of shifting your mindset from thinking about profit as the thing that's left over after you sell a house, take out the expenses, and then you've got profit left. And instead, treating your business like expenses are the thing that are left over. And that's a great way to just keep them reined in so that you don't end up overspending on things because you're treating profit like it's the last thing that comes out. And I guess, how many of you guys have that mindset already? Or this is kind of a new idea to you?
Not new.
What's that?
Who, me? Not new, but I think that's because I've been working a lot with my coach on it. Until recently, I really have been flying by the seat of my pants, knowing that I'm making plenty of money and my expenses are super slim. But if I think about growing my business more, my expenses are going to get higher. So I just want to make sure that I'm much more mindful of that moving forward. But, I just did an income expense spreadsheet for the first time in the last month or so. And it gets you thinking when you boil it down to the minutia, not just of exactly what you're spending, but where you're making, where it's coming from. And so then, where are more places, right? Because my income is very narrow. It's sales, that's it. I need profit share. I'll just keep saying it. I need profit share. But maybe if I build a team, I'll get some.
There you go. So there's two assumptions we have to make this perspective work for us. And they are kind of counterintuitive, again, to what we do at Business Planning Clinic, which is create a huge goal and turn it into bite-sized pieces. And so instead, when we think about actually doing that formula, the first thing we have to think about is how much business will we realistically do in a year, a quarter, a month, kind of depending on how you're breaking this down, and coming up with that number. And if you guys would write down a number in just commission income, that's a reasonable amount of money that you would close in 2021.
Do you mean our total GCI or?
Yeah, total dollars that would be gained in commission because of your activities. And then secondly, how much money do you want to make? How much money do you want to actually deposit into your personal checking account next year? Now that the first and maybe most difficult question is, do those two things line up? And now, having made those two assumptions, gives us the opportunity to make expenses the last thing on the list. So does anybody want to share the two numbers they just wrote down?
Okay, I will.
Go ahead.
I actually did it more around this year, just since these are the numbers I've been looking at. But my goal for year end is 15 million in volume, 350 in GCI, 100,000 in profit after taking out would be, the equivalent of salary. That was the thing I learned. I did Profit Camp last week, which is for, I guess, mastery clients or whatever. And that was the most instructive thing I got out of that. Everything else was kind of, the direction I was heading and the budget models and all that. But the idea that even though we're business owners and you just want to take it all from one account to the other, basically, that the best way to get to that predictable income is to take out a salary for yourself every month. You don't necessarily have to pay the taxes as if it's a salary, right? Just you can stick with your whatever business model you have, LLC or just independent contractor, but shift some amount of money every month from your business to your personal, kind of pretending it's salary if that's what you want to, but it helps you get to actually true profit also, because you're getting the money every month you need to cover your, what your personal budget and personal goals are. But then the profit layer on top of that is, that's really profit at the end of the day, since you're working for yourself.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
You've got a job and you own a business, right?
Right.
Those are two separate things. So for the sake of this conversation, let's treat profit like it's only profit, right? So it's not your salary. What was your profit number that you said after the 350?
So my profit number would be 250.
250? Leaving you with the obvious answer of $100,000 as expenses versus putting the expenses next to the 350, and then it's like, oh, lucky me, I landed at X in profit, and this is how much I get to keep. And again, the value of this perspective is that it's super easy for us as agents to get caught up in the mindset that if I want to make more money, I'm going to go spend money on these 3 things or these 4 things. And that's how you identify the way you're going to make more money, as opposed to identifying the way you're going to make more money by limiting the amount you're spending, by caring about how much you actually want to take home, instead of just getting to take home whatever happens to be left over. So again, I don't think you don't build a whole model on this, but I think this is a perspective that you have to keep in mind as you're moving through the business planning clinic that we've got coming up in a month. Really, is having the perspective of keeping your money as opposed to just letting it disappear and getting whatever didn't disappear. What was that, Mike? What was the Dave Ramsey quote you said to me on Thursday?
I was just about to put it in the chat box, but it's if you don't tell your money where to go, you're going to wonder where it went.
Yeah, I think that's just that boils down this very, very concisely. And I think I can tell you I've been guilty for probably half of all the years I've been in this business of signing up for stuff, thinking like that was the way I was going to do, 10 more deals. You're gonna see in the advertising budget of for this year for me that I managed to waste about $1,200 on something stupid that doesn't work and didn't work, and now it's gone. So, but this is basic stuff. So there's not a boatload to talk about here, and I know that it's super simplistic, but I do think we need to have kind of a shift in mindset away from revenue minus expenses equals profit, and a shift towards revenue minus profit equals expenses.
Yeah. And Andrew, just to piggyback a little bit on that, I think the very first things that we covered should inform that profit number, right? You don't, and if the expenses have to float high, like you just accept, like you want more time, which is probably going to mean less profit because you're going to have to buy leverage elsewhere, right? And so getting that mindset there, then to say I'm comfortable running a business with a thinner profit margin if it requires less of me is, not to be blasphemous in the 30-30-40 model, but it's okay if you don't take home 40% and you're running a business the way that you want to, and you feel like you're getting paid for those expenses.
Yeah. No, I think that's why I wrote these down, because I think once we've talked about all three of these, we're going to kind of brainstorm briefly about kind of how to tie these to these perspectives. So that's why they're written down, so that I don't forget them when we're all done here. But let's move on to just data and trends analysis. And for this part, the first thing, am I able to share my screen already? Is that?
I'll take care of it. Hold on. Sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
Make sure your screen's ready, Andrew.
All right. You should be good to go.
Okay. Okay. Is that yes. Okay. Good. I guess how many of you guys have a pretty detailed kind of accounting form, whether it's an Excel sheet or QuickBooks or whatever it is that you use? How many of you are using something? I can only see a handful of people. I think I can still only see a handful. So are we talking about half the room maybe?
At least.
Okay.
Nearly everybody
Okay.
with the camera on.
Okay. So I think that if you're not doing it, the most important thing you should get out of this class is that you should do it. And like I said, if you want this Excel document, I'm happy to give it to you. It may or may not tailor to your business super well, but you can certainly make changes to it. So the thing that I do with this document, probably twice a year. I don't do it real often. I mean, I input stuff about quarterly, but I visit this twice a year to just really make sure of where things are at and where I'm either missing the mark, spending money I don't need to spend, or not spending money I should be spending. And as again, when I talked to Mike about all this stuff last week on Thursday, the big epiphany I have is if you look up in the income chart at the top there, you'll see that business is just past client and sphere. If I open up, let me, the advertising tab. And what is the amount of money I spend on my sphere and past clients is this $4,000. And all that is a box of candy that goes out to about 300 people every November. Which, as I look at this, like it all seems kind of silly. Truthfully, my advertising budget, as you can see, all goes to Eddie, with the exception of just a couple of things. And it makes it, I stood back and wondered, like, why don't I spend $7,000 or $8,000 more dollars a year on 2 or 3 other things with my sphere and past clients? Because I'm spending money on Realtor.com, and that generates 6% of all the closings. And I think the reality is, like, a lot of us have all this stuff accounted for, and the thing you really need is to know the percentages of those pieces of your business. Like that chart in the middle that is column E, F, G, and H is the most important part of this. Because without that, all this is something I can give to my accountant at the end of the year. Right? So is there anything for those of you that do this in pretty great detail, Can some of you guys share some of the best things you've learned about either mistakes you were making or opportunities that you found over the course of a year or two of doing stuff like this?
I don't track my expenses, but I should and I will now that you're going to send me your spreadsheet. But I have very, very detailed analysis of where my business comes from. So on my spreadsheet, it doesn't just say Sphere. It says, did I run into them at a baseball game? Did they contact me through Facebook? You know, if it was a referral, how do I know, you know, where did that, what source of me putting myself and my name out there, how does that relate to where my clients come from? Because my business is, you know, probably 90% referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing exactly where they come from. And I also track the date that we first talked about doing real estate business, so I can see how long it takes me to, you know, take some, you know, what's the life of a transaction from the first conversation.
Okay. Allison, do you have any idea how much money you spend on your Sphere?
I buy closing gifts for everyone.
Okay.
And a lot of times I buy closing gifts for sellers too. So, and how much I spend just depends, you know, I don't do cutting boards or any, you know, everybody gets something different that I learned about them during the process.
Okay. Okay. Because for me, I can say, like I said, that in my advertising, you saw the $4,000 or $3,971 or whatever it was. And the only other dollars on that expense chart that go towards my Sphere is probably, I'd have to go back and actually, I don't segment it, but about half of the $4,800 that's meals and entertainment is taking people out to dinners and happy hours that are, you know, I get a decent amount of business from a small group of people, and those people are people I go out with fairly frequently, you know, once or twice a month, I would say at least at this point. But it's interesting to me. This is the first time this year that I've really paid too much attention to this. And last year for me, business was kind of a second or third on the list of things I was doing. So I didn't really pay attention to it at all. So truthfully, this is the first time I've looked at some of these numbers in a year and a half because of that. And so, and I can tell you, I used to spend a heck of a lot more on meals and entertainment. I don't know how many of you guys were in the room at Mayfield probably 2.5 years ago, where we had a panel about lead generation. And the only thing I used to do was go out every Tuesday with a different person that were in that group of people that I went out with all the time. So that year, that meals and entertainment budget was probably twice as high by now, because I was going out every 4 times a month and spending $100, $150 on dinner. But I see that as a problem for me at this point. I'm still getting business from a lot of those people, but not all of them. And so that's the other place that I see as problematic, where I could do more with my money to get a better return. So anybody else on thoughts about things that they do track and lessons they've learned from that? Go ahead.
I'm spending too much on listings. Outside of photography, I'm not worried about that expense, but I've been way too generous saying, oh yeah, I'll pay, you know, that cleaning bill so that the house is perfect when your buyers move in, or, you know, picking up something at the end because now there's a new roof problem. You know, okay, you know, I know you already got slammed on point of sale. I'll help you get through this kind of nonsense. I just need to stop that entirely, because that was a ridiculous number this year. $6,000.
How much was it?
That's over the life of my time as a listing agent, though. That's the total of all my listings. So in 18 months, I've spent $6,000 helping listing clients do stuff that they should be paying for themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
Once in a while, right? Once in a while, I know you've got to sort of do that extra thing. And certain clients, yes, and other clients, no, but that it's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's easy to fall in the habit of feeling like that's how you do a good job, and you forget about all of the other things you've done for them that
Right.
they need to do, and you've done and done well, right? And it comes down to the last thing, and you feel like, oh, I don't want them to be upset with me, so I'm just gonna like throw some money in the pot. Yeah.
Right. And like to your point, I just looked at that number you were talking about. What do you spend on your sphere? And, over the course of, I don't even know how many listings, but I've spent more managing listings than I've spent on my sphere. So that is upside down world, right? Because my business is already a huge percentage referral. And if I want to keep those wheels spinning, that's where I need to spend my money.
Yeah.
Especially past clients and referral sources.
Yeah. I think one thing that Allison said a second ago that really hit the nail on the head is making sure that you don't fall into the trap of just tracking the stuff that the MREA says to track, or tracking stuff that, I track because you're going to use this Excel sheet. The fact is, you've got to really identify what are the most important components of your business, and your business is going to be different than mine, and different than Melanie's, and different than Jeremy's. We're all doing it our own way, and you've got to really make sure you've honed in on what are the things you need to track to really make sure you understand where you're succeeding and where you're failing, instead of just tracking generic normal stuff. So any other thoughts on this? Lessons learned?
It's also good to keep in mind what Gary's told us for years. It's usually like the 5th page of the vision speech, and where he goes through, or maybe the 10th, he goes through the return on investments associated with expenses for different lead sources. So it shouldn't be any surprise to any of us that our business is our database. It always has been. We've made it, we've gotten sold on different things on buying leads over the years, but it's the least amount of expenses that we have, and it has the highest ROI. So it's not, I mean, we could, if people did this on a regular basis, and not too many do, we could see that this would be the case in almost every single situation, especially as a business matures, because it's just going to be a repeat and referral business. If you keep in touch with them, if you reach out to them and contact them in any way, whether it's through a CRM, through a drip campaign, through social media, through events like physical contact. So it's always the absolute best thing to focus on, and it gives you your highest return on investment. We just complicate it too much, and we follow shiny objects that take us elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things, and we're going to kind of touch on this in both some data trends analysis conversation now, as well as zero-based conversation in a second. But Lisa, one of the things you mentioned was, you said the word "as business matures," which in talking about that as far as referral and sphere type business. But one of the things that I was just going to say, as our business matures, the other thing we have to be really careful of is a lot of times we do just a little bit more of what we did last year. Well, last year I spent $9,000 on some internet lead generation campaign that was a company that managed my Facebook ads and did all that, and then captured them, and then I got them as leads, whatever it is. And we would think, oh, well, that did well last year. It made 6 to 1 or whatever. So instead of 9,000, I'm going to spend 11,000 this year. And then the year after, 12,000, so on and so on and so on and so on. And a lesson that I learned a long time ago, I went from spending probably $500 a month on Zillow to spending many, many thousands of dollars. And what I discovered happened over time was you think to yourself, like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to spend a little bit more and it's going to give me more opportunity. And you make the natural conclusion that if I have more opportunity, I'm going to have more sales. But the reality is we hit a point where we go from something, the first year we did it, we spent $10,000 and made $90,000 in commission. So then the next year we double it and We don't make $180,000 in commission. We make 110. And then the next year we spend a little bit more and we make 120, and so on and so on and so on. And you hit, I was trying to think of a clever term to call this, but I couldn't think of one. But you hit the place where you're at like the highest point of efficiency at whatever it is you're using. And once you go beyond that, you still continue moving down the graph and making more money doing the thing you're doing by spending more on it, but you're not making 9 to 1, you're making 4 to 1. And then you hit a point where it's like, should I even be doing this anymore? Or should I just go back to what I did the very first time I did it? And if you're not tracking it, you're going to always think it's successful because you're going to do a little more business from it as you're spending more. The thing I equated it to when I was talking about this with Mike last week was in 2015, I probably doubled the amount of money I was spending on Zillow. And at that point, I went from the year before that, and a couple of years before that, truthfully, it was always paying like about 8 to 1 is what I got almost every year. And then in 2015, I thought, well, now I've got a couple of people working with me, so I'm going to double down on this, and we're going to make 8 to 1 on a $40,000 bet instead of a $6,000 bet. So that's what we did, and learned really fast that all that happened was instead of leads getting called 8 or 9 times, we'd have 4 or 5 times as many leads, and we would call them all one time. So it didn't really do anything. We made a little bit more money, but not nearly enough to cover that cost. And I think, again, if you're not actually tracking it, you look back and you say, well, yeah, I spent more money on X and we did more business because of it. So that was good. So I'll do it again. So let's move on though to zero base. And I would love for Mike, you to start the conversation on this, only because you have a little bit of experience doing this almost as like the hatchet man.
Yeah, I like that. I like that terminology. Yeah. So when Andrew and I were talking about this, I'm talking specifically about the crowd that we would be speaking to. And as Lisa mentioned, like as businesses mature, there's an opportunity to get really aggressive and really purposeful about where we spend. And the exercise is called zero-based budgeting. So I encountered this during my past life working for Abercrombie and Fitch. And as the operating margin of the company went from 22% on $4 billion in sales to about 4% on the same amount over the course of 5 years, the CFO and our finance team looked up and we were like, how did we find a way to spend, 75% of our profits without growing at all? And it's exactly as Andrew described, where you just do what you did last year, but you try to do more, right? And so when you think about opportunities in a large company like that, we were hemorrhaging money through marketing and in payroll is what it came down to. But instead of saying like, how do we turn the dials and tweak, you wipe everything out and you say, okay, every single piece of my business starts at $0. I don't care what I spent on it last year. And then circling back to that profit first idea, right? So I want to make, $250,000, and I don't try and sort through how to peanut butter that out among everything. I say, where am I getting my returns? And I hold everything individually accountable, right? Because as our business grows, we feel like we can't, you can't turn off. I mean, Andrew, look at your, the Realtor.com leads are a 3 to 1, right? And you have $240,000 in GCI on a $14,000, I think, spend from a marketing standpoint, or excuse me, a Sphere standpoint. And so if you were going to take those both to zero, you might not spend anything next year on Realtor.com, because if you wanted to take, $6,000 more home, could you make up the 12,000 out of your Sphere? And so that's where the conversation really starts to take place. Is you are aware of your trends, but you're aggressively holding every single siloed expense accountable. And, you know, we go through this exercise as a market center as well. Whenever we look at like, you know, hey, you know, cleaning and coffee cost X, right? Like, are we okay with that next year? Like, aside from anything else, like, is that number okay? And then, you know, on down the line. So I think that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, as you and I talked about this last week, a couple of things that really stood out to me that I think are going to be dominant traits in this room is I think a lot of times we start spending in 3 or 4 or 5 different avenues that are all kind of in, you know, they're all going down the same highway, and we're spending money on this internet lead source, and we're spending money on Facebook ads, and we're also spending money on a dialer, and we're spending money on all this different lead generation to do 5 or 6 different things, because we tell ourselves like, oh, if I have like, the more like diverse this is, the better opportunity I'm going to have to succeed, instead of really honing in on like, what's the 1 or 2 that actually work really well. It's like you just said, Mike, you look at the percentage of places where my business comes from, and some of the places that don't generate a whole lot of commission are not that small of budget items, relatively speaking, to all the other budget items.
Yeah.
So I think we're all guilty of that, because we all get the phone call from a guy who we don't hang up on fast enough, and he gets a spiel, and we think, oh yeah, there's no contract. I could do that for a month or 2 and see how it goes. Right?
Or
that was my mistake this year. Was
the trap.
And got nothing out of it, because that's a huge waste of money. But I think the reality is often we're guilty of just not being willing to address everything we spend money on. We just add things to the budget for next year. Subtract. One of the other things that Mike mentioned that I'm not sure of who else in the room here as far as how admin heavy we are in the room, but I think that's another place that a lot of us, as we build a team, like we get bigger to get bigger. And we start hiring people and bringing in new things, and we hire a marketing person and an admin person and another admin person, instead of like just making both of those admin people be able to spend an hour a day on some marketing materials. we keep piling on instead of revisiting the whole picture. Is really the point of zero base. And how many of you guys on an annual basis are willing to just completely get rid of any one thing that matters? Is that
For me, I discovered, and it was pandemic driven, of course, I spent a lot of events. It's, you know, that is, I'm better at working a room of people than converting a Zillow call. So that's where I went. So obviously with the pandemic, I stopped all of that, and I'm up a little bit over last year, and it made me really look at, again, where these sources were coming from, and they weren't coming because I met them at a, you know, Taste of Beechwood.
Yeah.
That was an eye opener, because, you know, if I want to do networking because I think it's fun and I like to see new people, that's one thing, but it is not a source of business for me.
Yeah. I think one thing to think about with this zero-based perspective is when we talk through like hiring classes, and the megas and monsters we used to do, and at the beginning of it, Scott would do the seven level business thing, right? And we'd go through it, and it seemed super lame, but we would go through it every single meeting, right? All the way to the 7th level, and describe all of those things, right? And one of the things, I can't remember at what level it is, but it kind of happens at almost every level in reality, is as you're about to go from a single agent to hiring an assistant, an agent with an assistant to hiring a buyer's agent or a marketing person, whatever it is your next step is like, before you take that leap, you should be doing absolutely everything you can possibly do with the current resources you have until you're just about to fall apart at the seams, and then you take the next step. And I think if we operated that way with our budget, as you just said, Allison, the fact is, like, you were getting business through your sphere and through networking, but you could do all kinds of free networking long before you started paying for it. And now you've realized I don't have to pay for it. I can still get a bunch of business from referrals and sphere without paying for marketing, or paying for networking activities. And I think the same thing, like I talked earlier about adding to my budget for my sphere. What if instead of adding to my budget by taking them out to dinner, I did something as plain as call them on the phone? No, I mean, I already own a phone. So, but I think a lot of times we try to make it more complicated than it is. If we start adding things that's like, oh, that's a cool little belly whistle. I'm going to add that to the equation and see how much business it brings in. So now I want to kind of circle back on all of this and just kind of like talk through for a minute how to make sure we put these things that I wrote down here in the bottom here in the center of our business finance conversation, right? So if the reality is not only want more sleep, which I think is a lot like time, right? So if what you want is time, then you don't build a business finance model that adds opportunity to do more business. Like, you potentially build a business finance model that allows you to keep as many dollars as possible from the business you do. And again, if this 350 could turn into 280 in profit, then you would just spend a little bit less and you do the same amount of business, right? If what you're looking for is predictable income, that might mean you need to build a bigger business, which does mean you have to build a business finance strategy that allows you to add a few people and create an opportunity. Make sure that your income comes here. That's the only way to make this business predictable, is to be spending last year's money. So that just requires you to build a bigger business to be able to do that, right? And if we're talking about things like referrals or like specific lead sources, now it's a matter of making sure that your finance model actually caters to that. And so it would be a real shame to see a person like me, for instance, who gets all their business from referrals, and then you see $8,000 or $9,000 worth of internet spend. Like, do those two things jive? Not really.
Well, at least it starts a conversation for you, right, Andrew? Because I know we talked about this, and your Realtor.com stuff, you're typically, that's going to buyer's agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a like zero drag transaction. So maybe a 3-to-1 is a good enough return there because it gives them opportunities, right? And it's just putting money in the bank for you if you're not having to get mixed up in any of it versus, like you're doing 100% of the transactions on the sphere. And so that then means, that's where the variable of time comes into play, right? So you're basically, yeah, right. And so like, I think that there is, and we talked about this, there's no silver bullet in this conversation, right? Because everyone's got a different business. Now the models are there to help us, but as we said at the beginning, what you want out of your business is going to dictate the business financial model that you use.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I guess one of the things that we're not really talking about today, but wasn't part of our conversation last week, Mike, was the fact that, like, ideally, we should all be building, if we're going to build a team, we should be building a team that is built around the culture of our personal business, because that's clearly what we're good at. So you'd want to bring in people that also want to do that. So that's still where, like, I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it, but there's still a little bit of a disconnect there. Like, the thing that I feel like I should be doing way better is, rather than spend money on Realtor.com so that Douglas and Craig have people to call, like, why don't I could spend that $7,000 or $8,000 helping them reach their sphere.
Right.
And would that be more beneficial? And based on my business, I would say I will do a better job helping them close that business than Realtor.com. So that is the, the lesson learned for me here is that I do have to go back to the drawing board on like, what is the culture of my team, and
Mhm.
how do these dollars line up with that? So I guess, Danny, you guys, in talking through this today, Danny, you guys see any disconnects in your business with where you're spending money versus where you're making money? And do those things line up or not line up for you? Don't be shy.
I realize that I'm not spending hardly any money on marketing or advertising, and everyone else seems to be having a lot of categories that they're spending on. But this is the first full year for me that I'm not spending money on Zillow. I got rid of it early last year, and this year I'm going to do a lot more business than last year, and because I wasn't like, oh, the phone's ringing. Is it a Zillow lead? Do I have to answer it right now? I'm not a slave to that, and I can focus on every morning blocking out time, calling people that have done business with me. And it's made a big difference. I'm not looking at that phone because it used to always be the Seattle number, and now you don't know who's calling from Zillow anymore. So every time that phone would ring, I'm not sure if I need to be answering that or not. Now I don't have to worry about that. And that saves me about $6,000 a year. And, the amount of business just wasn't paying off for me. So that was huge.
Based on what we've talked about today, Jeremy, do you feel like is spending less getting you to like the core of what you want out of your business, or are there places that you should be chasing and spending that are different?
I think focusing on my sphere like you, that's a large part of my business. So I've been doing a little Facebook advertising this year for brand building, but I realize I'm getting nothing out of that. I'm going to stop that. It's not much, but a little bit. It's money I could put elsewhere and spend on my sphere. I think that's going to be repurposing a few things that I am doing marketing wise and just spending that directly on sphere and past clients. Yeah, I think that'll be huge.
Okay.
And just tracking it with it, and I don't do that right now. I've never done that, and that's I think going to be really big.
Okay. Yeah, and I will. I have no idea how to like put this sheet in the comments or anything.
You
So
can,
that way
if you just throw it to me, I'll send out a recap for everyone, and we'll add it in. That'll be great.
Okay. How about we've only got
Andrew, is it in Excel or Google?
it's Excel.
You can make a copy of it, X out all of the numbers and put it up in the Google Drive, and we can share it that way.
Okay. Michael have to help me through that.
We'll get it out to everybody in various formats. Yeah, that's great. But I think
Unfortunately, I don't know how to do anything with this other than populate the numbers.
Yeah.
Like,
you extra hot.
I just wanted to kind of see. I wanted to talk through some ahas or some ideas people have about how they're going to move forward here. Would love to get 4 or 5 people to cough something up.
I'm guilty of carrying some expenses that I feel helps the team, and holding on to Zillow a few months longer than I need to, probably spending more on Realtor.com than I need to, because I just want to keep filling up their cups, as opposed to working with them sometimes and saying, hey, there's agents on my team that are not suited for chasing leads. It's just not how they operate. So I should sit down more with them and see like, hey, if I had, I've got $1,000 in my pocket, I'd love to spend on you. What can I actually do with that will help you move your business needle? You know what I mean? As opposed to here's more leads, and because I don't want to pay attention, so, guilty of that as charged. We ran an exercise a few weeks ago, kind of auditing. So we track basically any contractor that we refer out, trying to identify some new business opportunities. And we're actually talking with somebody about creating a JV with a junk haul-away company, because we've just been pumping this guy for months now. and we're, chatting with him now, and, trying to make a little bit more money just because we kept tracking it, and we were like, wow, we're really sending him. Like, Jeremy, we send Jack Dushaw, a lead every, week and a half. So, at
That's
what
my
point-
cousin.
He's the best. He's the best. We love him. But yeah, we like to pay attention to that stuff. I'm somebody who lives in the spreadsheet religiously. I'm in this thing every day. I touch it every day. So we're constantly tracking, but yeah, a lot of, look at the numbers and you learn how to analyze them. A lot will expose itself. So
Yeah.
thanks, man.
Right on. The key to victory is really just actually looking at it and analyzing it, as opposed to it just being a thing that sits on your computer.
I have the Mike Boych spreadsheet, so if anybody wants the spreadsheet, hit up Mike Boych. I'd love to hear from you.
Anybody else? Any good ahas?
Yeah, I'll say, just in the exercise of going through this with you, one thing that I liked is how you, your streams of income at the top of your spreadsheet includes things that, you have opportunity or access to take advantage of, like, you're part of the title company, you have your profit share on there, because, those are in total part of your real estate business, right? And, also provide ways that you can, as you look at the revenue number necessary to get the profit number, right? It doesn't all have to come from the sale of houses, right? So if you want to get to 350 in revenue, you got 5 ways to do it, versus like that just means selling more houses.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any for anybody? Or just lessons learned? Maybe not a game-changing lesson learned.
Melanie, I know this has been something you've been working on. Any ahas for you?
Well, I think, Andrew, what you were saying about spending in line with the culture and goals of your team, that really resonated with me, because I've been trying to think about, so if I do bring a licensed agent in, because I have an admin, I have a social media person, then next, I've leveraged off pretty much almost everything I can that doesn't require a licensed agent, except for running signs around, but that's okay. Not the end of the world. So, and if I had a licensed agent, they could do that for me. But so I've been thinking about what would the culture of a team be, right? And so where would the spending be? And I think, like you just said, I don't think I'd be buying leads anywhere. I think I'd be helping people build their own business so that it was sustainable, if they chose to leave the team, right? Because I see a lot of value, I guess, in the experience I had starting on a team and learning enough about the business to then go on my own, and my business matured, it grew. And some people want to be the business owner and others don't. So who knows who lands on the team. But, I think, Jeremy, you said, investing in more in the sphere, right? So whoever comes in to the team, and Andrew, you said this too, like invest in their databases rather than only yours to then hand off leads. So that would be one thing for sure, that I hadn't thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense.
And I think what Jeff said is the trap that it's easy to fall into with a team, and that is like, oh, I got to spend money, so I have stuff for these people to do. And
right.
That is, I'm not going to say probably the wrong answer.
It's stupid. Just say it out loud.
For sure. So, all right, unless anybody's got any final burning ahas they really want to get out, I think we are just about set here. So I do want to thank you guys for your participation, and hopefully these three perspectives can really help you moving forward. I'm sure all of us think about some of this stuff, but I doubt all of us think about all of this stuff. And I think all three of these things are really helpful when you're thinking about how you want your business to look and where you want your money to go. So thank you,
Andrew.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Appreciate that. Guys, if anyone wants you know, the opportunity to bounce anything off, you know, I know Andrew would be up for it. I'd certainly be up for it. I know that the opportunity for us to share and exchange ideas and, you know, get up to our elbows in our businesses, like, we have a strong community of doing that here. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that opportunity exists.
All right, cool. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.